Hey everybody, welcome to the I303 podcast. I'm your host David Prieto. We're here we talk about our genius insights and oddball opinions from the perspective of an IO. Today I have Alifiya Khericha with me, and she's going to be giving her hot takes when it comes to the IO and HR industry. And with that said, Alifiya, if you would mind sharing a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah, I'd love to. So I started out in education. I was a Teach for America Corps member in Las Vegas and moved up to Seattle when my time with the Corps was done. And I was working at a nonprofit where I helped set up their diversity, equity, and inclusion team. And while we were having conversations and talking about ways that we can, be a more inclusive environment and how can we bring DEI to the forefront of our practices, I noticed that a lot of the solutions were equivalent to putting a band-aid on a leaky pipe.
Gotcha.
And I remember thinking, there has to be something better. We have to know how to do this better. I want to know how to fix the metaphorical pipe. And like any sane person, I said, so I'm going to go get a doctorate in industrial organizational psychology because that will teach me why the pipe broke in the first place and then maybe how to fix it. And so throughout my career, I've really leaned into the talent development space. So really specializing in talent management and learning and development. And really, my main goal is to just help people find their version of success and support it within the context of the working environment.
Gotcha. And so from an IO perspective or from a psychology perspective in general, it sounds like you went straight into it. So for some of us IOs, our origin story, we go into clinical first and we recognize, okay,
Mhm.
I'm not sure if clinical is necessarily the best route for me. For you, was it straight? Okay, I'm in teaching, Teach for America, boom, going straight into IO. Is that kind of how it unfolded for you?
It was, oh, maybe I should do neuropsychology.
Gotcha.
And because I was a biology major in college, and I said, maybe I should go into neuropsych. I love the brain. And then as I was reflecting on my experiences, especially in the education space, because I taught at a Title I school in Las Vegas where there is a big need, right? Teaching a population that has grown up in generational poverty. 98% of the student body was on free or reduced lunch program. 90% of my students were non-white. And I realized, oh, I maybe neuroscience isn't it. Like
Yeah.
I love this work and I want to help these kids get better in the system that I was in. And then realizing, oh, I could translate that into adult environments and say, hey, how can I help people be successful in the environments that they're in? Since education, especially elementary education, wasn't something I was really passionate about, but
Gotcha.
making people feel a sense of belonging and success and inclusion, that is something I'm passionate about.
Perfect. All right. And so IO, one of the key cornerstones or key considerations in our field is that science practitioner gap. And for
Mhm.
us, there are some tried and true or quote unquote best practices. Curious to get your thoughts or your hot takes when it comes to some potential industry standards that exist or are considered the quote unquote norm that you may not necessarily agree with.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think my number one hot take
Yeah.
is I hate performance reviews.
Okay.
I
Tell me
hate
more.
annual performance reviews. They are a little archaic at this point, right? A lot of the best practices that IOs have are based off of research that was done 30, 40, 50 years ago. That
Gotcha.
is a
Yeah.
long time, and the
Yeah.
populations were mostly on white men. So we think about, taking the environment that these studies were done and these best practices were created in and look at our environments today, and they are vastly different.
Yeah.
Technology has really made it so we can move at speeds much faster. We can communicate much faster. Knowledge is available to us right within one Google search.
Yeah.
So to have these, once a year performance reviews that kind of rely on our our own memories, which we know are faulty, when we have all this technology available to document consistent and continuous performance and feedback and goals, why are we not utilizing that? Right? We're in a different era. And I think
Yeah.
it's time, especially for performance reviews, that we move out of this one time a year, and two times a year is even worse, in my opinion, and start doing something
Yeah.
more continuous, right?
Gotcha.
start looking at performance as a continuing journey as opposed to this one time a year event that happens.
Yeah. And so the way I think of it is imagine if we're still trying to use a typewriter from 40 or 50 years 40 or
Yeah.
50 years ago. I mean, it's just not going to work in the business
Yeah.
that we operate in today. So I like
Yeah.
the idea of moving from a one time to a two time. What are your thoughts on frequency? And do you think anyone else should be participating in that performance management or that performance evaluation? So I know traditionally it's top down, supervisor to employee, but there
Yeah.
are alternatives. Curious to hear your thoughts.
I attended PSYOP a couple years ago and I was in a room with like the messiahs of the 360.
Yeah, yeah,
And, Palakos was one of them. And I remember they said, it's still the gold standard. Any way that you can make a 360 or a partial 360 work, that's how you want to do it. And I'm a
yeah,
big fan of that. So I love the idea of having peer and upwards feedback and downwards feedback. Managers need feedback from their direct reports just as much as direct reports need feedback from their managers. So I think it's really important we try to get a very holistic view. And I think, if you're going to have a rating, do that once a year. You don't need to rate people multiple times a year, but you can have informal conversations that still help people stay on the right track or move with the business because we know businesses are moving so fast. One day
yeah.
they say they want X and the next day they realize they need Y. So, how can we create systems that are flexible when are flexible and can move as the business moves?
Gotcha. And so for me, I've gotten two pieces of pushback when it comes to potentially implementing 360s, and I kind of want to get your thoughts, or if maybe you experienced something similar. Pushback one is that's too time consuming. It's too expensive. We're not going to be able to do it. Yeah, it sounds great, maybe technology companies, but I don't know. We work in healthcare, or we work in education, or we work in kind of a more traditional kind of environment. Have you gotten any of that pushback?
No,
Okay.
not necessarily, but I do understand the pushback. And I think my question and my response would be okay, so how can we make it a part of our daily systems,
Gotcha.
right? How can we take maybe peer feedback, for example, and make it a quarterly thing as opposed to a one time year thing? Or how can we encourage a culture of feedback? So much feedback is happening that by the time we get to performance reviews, right, the annual piece of determining merit and promotion and ratings and whatnot, you already have this extreme catalog of information. You can say, okay, where are my gaps? Where are those missing pieces and where can I go and find them? And maybe that's another way that we can go about it. But traditional 360s, yes, they are time intensive, they are expensive, and they are draining on everybody. But if we can do them, take the idea and the essence of them and make them work for us, I think there's a lot of positives that could happen.
Gotcha. So instead of just jumping in head first, everyone's doing a 360. It's okay, let's tiptoe. Let's see,
Yeah.
what principles we can take and how can we apply them.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. I like that. And looking back, that probably would have made a lot more sense instead of saying everybody has to do the 360 all year round. It's like, we don't have time for that, man.
No.
We're never, as soon as we get started, the next one's going to be due. And it's like,
Yeah.
we'll never be able to catch up. So definitely agree with that. Pushback two, and this one can be a little trickier. So in 360s, like you touched upon, peer feedback is a key component. What if we start seeing factions start to create or factions start to um, come to life? Meaning we get individuals who roughly are on the same level, recognizing, okay, your evaluation is contingent on me giving you a strong performance evaluation. If I scratch your back, will you scratch mine? Type of
Yeah.
thing. What are your thoughts there?
That one's tough. And it is such a
Yeah.
real problem, right? It's
Yeah.
something that we're always trying to think about how can we get real meaningful feedback. And I think the only way you can really go about it is make sure that you are I think managers need to play a bigger role then, right? It shouldn't
Gotcha.
be me, Alifia, the peer, gets to ask David, Alifia's peer, for feedback on absolutely everything. It's
Mm,
Alifia talks to her manager, and they think about their projects and their year holistically, and they think about what they're working on, and they come up with people together, right? They
gotcha.
come up with a list of people that everyone feels comfortable with that, yeah, they've seen me in this situation, in this situation. I think this would be a well-rounded picture. I think the other thing you do then is you try and make it confidential. So you
Mm,
have at least five peers, right? That's
yeah.
so difficult to do. If you're doing a true 360, you say, okay, we're going to have at least five. So then it can be confidential and, you're having some anonymity thresholds with it. But if it's over the course of a year, that's harder to do. So you really have to, I think managers have to play a bigger role in making sure they're getting that quality feedback.
Yeah, definitely. The last thing I think anyone would want to see is kind of a Game of Thrones start to play
Yeah.
out where it's, this house against this quote unquote house, but this group of employees versus that group, and
Mm-hmm.
then it gets really political and yeah, we never want to
Mm-hmm.
see that.
Mm-mm.
So switching gears a little bit here, I know in psychology and the social sciences in general, replication is starting to become a really big problem. Curious to get your thoughts or your perspective when it comes to, is that an issue and some potential ways where we might be able to navigate through that?
Yeah, I would say it is a huge issue, right? We have the file drawer problem
Yeah,
of studies get done, they go in, or maybe they get done, they don't have a effect. Again,
yeah,
they go in the bottom drawer and no one
yeah,
looks at it again. But it is really important that we start replicating our studies outside of, especially these older studies that are tried and true, right? Our leadership studies, like anything from Judge, right? Any of his
yeah,
meta-analysis that tells
yeah,
how leadership is done. Let's look at those now,
yeah.
right? Is
Let me jump in real quick for the listeners who don't know what that is. Would you mind touching more a little bit in terms of what is a replication study? And yeah,
Yeah.
so for those who don't know
So
what that is, yeah,
a replication study is, I mean, kind of just what it sounds like. You take a
yeah,
study that has been done and you replicate it on a different group of people, or you replicate it
gotcha.
in a different environment. So maybe we have a study that is done in corporate America on mostly, mid-level career men and women. And then maybe we take that to nursing, the healthcare sector and say, hey, how does this work in healthcare? Or maybe we take it to a different group of people within that same environment. But it's really just understanding, do these effects hold in multiple situations, right? Can we strengthen the idea that this really should be a best practice?
Yeah, 100%. And I think there's an opportunity. So I didn't go all the way to the doctorate or, to the PhD level in terms of an IO. But one of the considerations at earning the master's was still completion of the thesis or some kind of
Mm-hmm.
research endeavor. And I see an opportunity potentially for master's degree students who do potentially want to go more practical, want to do more practice-based initiatives, that a replication study is a sweet spot, meaning they don't have to generate new knowledge in the field in order to earn that degree. Instead, they might be able to replicate a study that already exists, like you mentioned, potentially in a different context. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that's fair. I think we need to have more replication studies in
Yeah, I
general,
think so
even
too.
in on the doctorate level. That was something that one of my professors talked a lot about is how can
Yeah,
we do some more replication studies? And she was such a proponent of it. And it was something that I was actually like, can I replicate
yeah,
a study from my research team? Like
yeah,
that sounds like a good place for me to be, right? Because I want to move knowledge forward. That doesn't always mean bringing in brand new knowledge, right? So I
yeah.
did kind of a replication study in that I
Okay.
took something that was, and by rep, maybe I didn't, but I took a concept that's very well known and I said, I think it could work for this. And I saw if it did, right? So I expanded on the knowledge a little bit, which could easily be replicated by somebody else.
Yeah. And one of the issues I've seen kind of in earning those higher level degrees is the overwhelmingness, if you will, of trying to get published, of trying to, engage in a study and then to have it be shared in some kind of professional journal. So one option I've heard, and I don't know, I haven't thought fully through it, but essentially to open source research. So what I mean by that is if somebody engages in a study, why can't they just publish it directly to potential consumers or potentially to the general public at large? So I haven't fully thought through what that would look like, but that might be an opportunity to not only engage in replication studies, but to encourage individuals in the field to do more of their research kind of on their own, if you will.
Yeah,
Do you see that as a potential alternative?
I think that's a great alternative. I think if we can no longer gatekeep
Yeah,
our
yeah,
knowledge, I think that's always going to be a positive. So I'm with you. I wish we could see some more open source
yeah,
research available. I haven't heard of anything to this day, but
yeah.
maybe this
Yeah,
podcast will generate something.
there you go. Fingers
Maybe we'll get it
crossed.
after this. Yeah.
Yeah. So as I was sharing that, one of the things I read, it was either yesterday within the recent past. I think it was the University of Zurich, and I just read the kind of the highlight, but essentially they ran an AI influence study of Reddit users. And so this is the only potential drawback I see if individuals go rogue and start doing their own studies, is there's no IRB. There's no, review board that's going to say, okay, this adheres to ethical principles when it comes to research. And so do you see the IRB? I don't even know how that would play out. So if somebody did want to self-publish, engage in their own research, maybe it would be composed of peer members who would potentially be a part of this open source group to be the quote unquote IRB. Would that be one potential opportunity to navigate through this, just to make sure, no one's engaging in anything unethical?
I don't see why you couldn't treat an open source platform like you treat any other journal, right?
Gotcha.
You have like, right, most of these research studies are coming out of university somewhere. So the IRB is still going to be there. We still need to make sure that there's funding there. We still need to make sure that they're doing the right study. So why couldn't we keep it similar in that, people who are in universities all over can still go here and say, hey, I want to publish here. And there still can be some peer review. There still can be some guardrails, because it's important that we're not just saying, hey, I want to do a study on X and have it be completely wrong or unethical. We want to make sure that whatever is being provided to the public is good research. So I think there would still need to be some guardrails in place in order to
Okay.
make sure that we're actually providing the right thing to people. But it's less of, to me, it's less of, or it's more of, how can we get rid of some of those barriers to entry for people
Yeah.
to get access to this research, right? Because if you're not part of a university, it's expensive to
Yeah.
stay up to date on all
Yeah.
these research articles.
Yeah. It's something like to get access, like $30 an article or something like that. And
Yeah,
and it's like
it's
who's gonna invest that? I mean, for this
right.
one, yeah. So
Not
yeah.
me.
Yeah, right. And
I have grad school debt.
there you go. We all do. And with
Yeah.
yeah, I was it's a little off topic. I was hoping, student loan forgiveness would have come to fruition during the last administration, and it's
Yeah.
unfortunate that that didn't play out. So yeah, I'm curious to see how the reactivation of student loan payments is going to impact the overall economy. And so yeah, that's a whole nother topic for yeah, a
Yeah.
whole nother podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Makes me nervous.
yeah, definitely. All right, so switching gears again, AI. So AI is essentially it's coming in hot. They're coming in like Cyberdyne for my Terminator fans out there. It's going to come in and I'm not exactly sure how it's going to play out in the field of IO, in the field of HR, but I'm curious to get your thoughts. What do you see as, where do you see AI coming in? Any reservations we should have? Any potential recommendations on how to best leverage it in the workplace?
That's a really good question. I'm still, I would say, an AI novice.
Okay.
Honestly, I think the majority of the world is AI novice. No one's an expert in it yet. Uh,
Yeah.
but the way that I've used AI is I think it can be a very helpful tool in that it can help reduce the amount of time we spend on tasks that are not really worth a lot of time,
Yeah.
right? So, like building out a project plan. You can maybe have ChatGPT create you a first pass project plan that you can then go in and add the context to, or helping you write like quick emails and draft communications. Those things take a lot of time and energy. But I think that there's a way that we can use AI to help us so we can really focus on those higher order tasks. And for me, AI, I think, could really be important in helping us draw connections between our different programs and systems to see maybe the holistic picture, right? How is this training impacting this person's
Mm,
performance? Like,
mhm.
can it start telling us data points that we might not originally have? And I think that is a way that I would love to see AI being used. Or, is there a way for us to create AI to help with learning initiatives
Gotcha.
where maybe someone takes a training and AI picks up on it And after certain calls, they'll send out a quick poll survey to everyone on the call to see, did that person demonstrate, XY behavior? If it's about, maybe public speaking or meeting agendas or something like that, right? Is there a way for us to start gathering real-time insights on how people's behavior are changing post a learning program? That's how I would like to see AI being used. And I think that helps people make better decisions and say, hey, okay, I think we need to iterate in, an X way instead of Y way. But in terms of it taking over jobs in HR, I don't know the answer to that. My hope,
Yeah.
selfishly is no, it won't.
Yeah.
We are people and we are in the business of people, and we need to make sure that we keep that real human element to our work. But I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I hope Will Smith wasn't right. I hope
Yeah. Yeah.
iRobot was just fiction.
Yeah. Yeah. And so one of the areas where I've seen AI really take a big step into the field of IO is when it comes. So we initially had structured interviews where, it was kind of just like we have now, structured questions, structured rating criteria. Then higher view, they were kind of the big boy, if you will, the big man on campus in terms of asynchronous interviews using
Hmm.
recordings. And they started tiptoeing into, can we leverage AI to dissect, quote unquote, dissect the interview and provide some kind of score? I'm now reading that there are certain AI organizations where candidates are going to be interviewing with an AI that will respond in real time to the candidate and adjust based on the responses the candidate is sharing. And so that's one area where I see AI really coming into the IO world. And one of the considerations is, well, if that's the case, not everyone who interviews for the same position will necessarily be asked the same questions, nor will they have the same experience.
Hmm.
And some IOs think that is potentially the future, that it's going to be able to adapt and adjust based on the responses from the candidates with kind of a loose or a semi-structured approach. Wanted to get your thoughts if you think that is a viable option, or if we think we're getting too deep, too fast, and we need to kind of hit the brakes a little bit.
I think we need to hit the brakes a little bit,
I think so
right?
too. Yeah.
I think there's too much we don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
And just immediately saying AI is here to take over the hiring process is tough, right? We need to look into the impacts of that. If higher view is there to help you dissect an interview, I think that's great. It's still an interview is happening, and you have someone saying, hey, based off of this model that you provided me, here's what I'm thinking. And hiring is expensive. So anytime that we can reduce the amount of time to hire someone, I think is great, right? Time to fill is an important metric that companies need to look at. But when it comes to it being adaptive and maybe taking over the full process, I'm still hesitant on that. I think we're too new. People
Yeah.
still don't really know how to you know, type in the right prompts to chat
Yeah.
GPT yet. So how are we now saying, hey, now let's make all of our hiring decisions?
Yeah. No, that's a good point. And yeah, I don't know from an IO perspective, I definitely agree with kind of the reservation and okay, we need to be cautious with this. But at the same time, I also recognize it from a business perspective, to your point, to decrease that time to fill. And it's playing that balancing game. So, quick side note, literally just before jumping onto this call, I actually saw, and I don't know if I should put them out there, I'm going to put them out there. I think and I'll edit this out if I need to later. But now jumping back into our conversation, I think Workday just had a class action lawsuit filed against them due to
Uh-huh.
discrimination based on AI decisions. Did you hear about this also?
Yeah, it was age. They were
Okay,
discriminating
yeah, yeah,
based off of
yeah,
age.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I think that's one of the issues with AI is in how can I say this? Inherently, AI is not biased, but it magnifies the bias that already exists within the individuals who are creating the large language model behind it. So
Yeah.
it's not discriminated in and of itself, but it's taking information from individuals who may have done so. And I think that's definitely a consideration we need to have moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, AI is created by humans.
Yeah,
Humans are incredibly biased and flawed.
yeah,
So AI is going to be biased and flawed. It's going to be hopefully less biased and flawed than, a group of individuals, but it is. And I think people take it as an ultimate truth and this is how it is, black and white. It's very neutral, and that's just not the case.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so I'm curious to see how that unfolds, especially since Workday is kind of one of the bigger players in the field. I mean,
Hmm.
it's almost like every organization now uses
Yeah,
not just their HRIS, but their entire ERP
platform.
system. Yeah.
Yeah,
And it's
yeah.
yeah, it can get super expensive. So on the one hand, we have businesses and organizations tiptoeing into kind of leveraging AI and potentially removing individuals from the workplace. On the other hand, we have some organizations now mandating individuals return to the office. And
Hmm.
so I don't know how they're balancing these two, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts. What do you think about the RTO mandate that's catching fire right now?
I'm gonna sound like a broken record. I think it's so stupid.
Okay, tell me more.
I think
Yeah.
it is so stupid. COVID changed everything about the world of work.
Yeah.
And I hate bringing up COVID because of COVID, but
Yeah.
it really did change the world of work. And when COVID hit, I was working at a Microsoft solutions company that was already remote based. So it didn't really have an impact on the organization or how people worked. But I know people who, went to work from home for the first time ever. My spouse being one of them, never having to work from home ever,
Yeah.
and then now home all the time. Did not know how to handle it. But I think we really learned in, the the 5 years that we've been, in COVID and out, that you really can be productive when you're at home.
Yeah.
And some say, and there are studies that show you're actually more productive at home.
Hmm.
That you add remote working along with flexible time off, and you have people who are never leaving their computers because they
Yeah.
can take them with them everywhere. And they're
Yeah.
attached to their computers or their phones, and they're always available. I think if you're going to do a return to office, I think hybrid is the sweet spot.
Okay.
There was a study done in 2015, I think by Allen et al., that did a meta-analysis and found that 3 days in office is is kind of the sweet spot for a hybrid. And I'll have to like verify that.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it's Allen et al., but they did that, and I think that's probably still the sweet spot. I think
Okay.
people, we had this 5 years, and I'm speaking purely for myself. Of I've been in my house for a long time. I need to leave it a little bit, right? You
Yeah.
need to separate your work and your
Yeah.
living space. But a full RTO, if we're going to go full RTO, then let's go back to pre-COVID. Let's go back to leaving our computers at work. Let's go back to not
Mm.
having anything on our phones. Let's go back to a true 9 to 5 office environment where you have meetings in person and there's a lot of social interaction and there's happy hours after work. And
Yeah.
when you're done on Friday, you close your laptop, you lock it up, and you head on home. The problem is that is not the way that we're working. We're saying, oh, you have to RTO and remote work at the same time. You need to bring your laptop home with you. You need to, respond to my emails on Sunday. Why
Yeah.
is it okay for me to work from home on a Sunday, but not for me to work at home on a Monday?
Yeah.
Right. I think there's so much stuff around RTOs about collaboration and
Yeah.
socialness that is just, we know that it's not true. We know that these are reasons that people, executives are hiding behind. And my hot take opinion, because they don't want their real
Yeah.
estate values to go
Yeah.
down,
Yeah.
right? Like they spend
Yeah.
all this money on their offices, and we don't want it to go away. But
Yeah.
I think if you have a hybrid environment, that to me is a sweet spot. But if you're in the office during a hybrid environment, then you're working with your team. It's collaboration time.
Yeah.
You have face-to-face meetings. You are brainstorming and delivering, and it is not you working in a cubicle having a virtual call with someone who's
Yeah.
on the other side of the United States.
Yeah. 100% agree. And so for me, I agree with you that if we are going to do an RTO in terms of, we're coming in, everyone's coming back into the office, I think there's an opportunity to negotiate that. So what I mean by that is there has been some research, and it has been in other countries, but essentially the 4-day work week is just as productive as the 5-day.
Yeah,
So I'm thinking, okay, if we are going to have the RTO, bet, but we're only going to come into the office 4 days a week. So that'll be a
yeah,
nice kind of sweet spot for both parties where we have the come back into the office, but it's one less day a week. And
Hmm.
like you mentioned, we can close up our laptop, call it a day, have 3 days off instead of the two. Do you think
Yeah.
that's a viable kind of alternative?
It'd be fine with me. I
Okay.
don't know
Yeah,
if it
like
would
most
work for
people
other,
would.
or yeah, like
Yeah,
I would
yeah,
love a 4-day work week.
yeah,
I think anyone who has worked at all understands that their work fills the time that they are required
yeah,
to fill,
yeah.
right? So like you can make a 2-hour project really stretch
Balloon it
out
up.
for a
Yeah,
full
yeah,
eight
yeah,
hours. If you
yeah.
try hard enough, you can make it a week.
Yeah.
So I think if we are able to really work a little bit smarter, right? It's not about working harder, it's about working smarter. But that 3 days off, oh, the amount of
Yeah.
rest people would have, the amount of burnout that we could reduce in our people, that would be huge. You can come back on Monday
Yeah.
ready to go, knowing that, you got a lot done in 32 hours, and then you have that time to rest and relax. And how many times are people like, okay, so Friday night, I'm so tired. So then I
Yeah.
go to sleep. And then Saturday, it's like my one day. And then Sunday comes and I have to get ready for the next week. Like there's
Yeah.
no time to truly rest. And
I
this,
agree. Yep. I agree 10,000%. And I think there's an opportunity. So I see we kind of saw this with Gen X, but I think we're definitely seeing it with millennials. And so I'm gonna share my age. If you want to, feel free to share yours. But I'm a millennial, and I think we're the first generation that really grew up comfortable with online or virtual communication. What I mean by that is growing up, I had AIM or
yeah,
AOL instant messaging. So
yes,
for my younger listeners who don't know what that is, it was kind of the first version. I think it even came back or came out before text messaging, if memory serves me right, or they came out
yes.
roughly around the same time.
I think it was before. I think it was
Okay.
AIM and then it was MSN Messenger.
Yes, yeah. And at the
Yeah,
time, I was thinking, why would anybody text? Like, what's
yeah,
just call them. And
yeah.
then little did I know that eventually no one would be texting each other. It'd just be instant messaging from all these different. So I think as with all of that said, I think as boomers and as Gen X, as they're transitioning out and retiring from kind of those more senior leadership roles, I think millennials, we're the first ones to truly embrace and develop relationships virtually. So not only did
Hmm.
I have AIM, not only did we have text messaging, but it was also the first generation of online gaming. So this is when video
Hmm.
games first came online. And I can't remember if it was PlayStation or the Nintendo 64, but essentially it was a shooter. And it was the first time I had an opportunity to communicate with others and develop clans in which we would get together at certain times of the
Yeah,
day. And some of these people lived all over the US. Like I never met them in person, but I was hanging out with them every single day after school. And
yeah.
we are able to develop those trusting, those collaborative, those creative solutions, those creative ideas
Hmm.
to be able to collaborate effectively. Do you
Hmm.
think it's possible or a reality that although there's this push for RTO now, that as millennials and kind of the next generation is taking over those leadership and senior leadership roles, we might open up again to either fully remote or maybe potentially more work from home? What are your thoughts there?
That's a really good question. I don't know.
Okay.
I really don't know. I think when you get into those senior leadership roles, you learn a lot more. There's a lot more information that they're unwilling to share with you, right? That
Yeah.
lead to the decisions that are being made. And do I always agree with those decisions? No, of course not. But I do know that they're getting a lot more information than me, individual contributor Alifia, is getting. I do think that we are seeing already, though, these smaller businesses opting for that remote first environment, realizing, oh, this is a way that I can A, capitalize on getting the best talent, and B, save some money,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And opting to have headquarters in very strategic locations, but not all over the country, right? Maybe two or three that they utilize for, client calls or all hands or, whatever team building events, but and then even then keeping those offices small and making them, work with the business and within the budget that they have. I think I think there's always a pendulum swing.
Yeah.
Right now we're really experiencing the pendulum swing on the opposite end of let's go pre-COVID ways.
Yeah.
And I think we'll see another pendulum swing going post-COVID ways, and then maybe we'll find a place in the middle. And to me, I really do believe that in the middle is probably hybrid.
Gotcha. Okay. So the last thing I want to get your thoughts on, and if there's anything else you want to discuss, feel free to let me know, but I definitely want to get your thoughts on this. And so Anthropic, they are an AI startup, and the CEO dropped a bombshell late last week. Essentially, he believes within the next 1 to 5 years, 50% of entry-level roles will no longer be needed as a result of AI. Some people think it's hyperbole. Some people think it's a little he's undercutting, that it actually can be significantly higher. Do you think there's any validity in terms of what he shared, or do you think he's just kind of be sensational, trying to get that headline?
I, I've heard this is an interesting question you ask because it's a
Yeah.
conversation I have with my friends a lot. I do think a lot of entry level positions are going to go away. That's
Yeah.
that's the end of it.
Yeah.
And that's tough. That's tough for all of our new college grads coming
Yeah.
out and being like,
100%.
but I'm entry level, right?
Yeah.
Uh, I do think a lot of them are going to go away. I don't know if this country can survive on having all of those roles go away.
Yeah.
So I think there's that balance of sure, AI sounds great, but we do not as a country have an infrastructure to support people who do not have jobs.
Hmm.
Look at what we're dealing with now, right?
Yeah.
Unemployment isn't enough for people. We have people who are paying an arm and a leg for Cobra or healthcare because healthcare is dependent on the employer. There's so many things that are happening that I think if this were really a reality, I think our we would collapse. Like
Yeah.
truthfully, I think that there would be some really big economic repercussions. And and that is something we have to balance.
Yeah.
So while I think it's a possibility that we will lose a lot of them, I don't know if it's going to be, at least I'm hopeful it's not as big as he says it's going to be because again, I don't think we could survive it. We're
Yeah.
already not surviving what's happening now.
Yeah. 100%. And so I'll share kind of my perspective and then curious to get your thoughts. So, in kind of the arc of transitioning from agriculture or to more manual labor into more of the information age, one of the themes we heard was learn to code. So, there were kind of blue collar individuals who were kind of upset that most of their job opportunities were being automated away. Agriculture is a big one, where it used to, take 100 individuals to farm a field, whereas a plow can do it, a handful of people with one tractor. So
Mhm.
one of the themes we heard was learn to code, learn to code, learn to code. And what's interesting now is, well, those positions are now being automated. And so what are we
Mm-hmm.
supposed to do next? So
Yeah.
it's like we went from agriculture to learn to code. Great, we did that. But now what do I do if that's being automated? And I don't know the
Yeah.
answer to that. And
I don't either. I don't know
yeah.
if you've heard, like, I have so many people who did these boot camps, these coding boot camps or
Yeah.
UX boot camps, and
Yeah.
are just cannot find a job.
Yeah.
Like, literally cannot find anything because, like you said, it's all AI, or they want someone with years and years of experience. And because of the amount of layoffs from Meta and Google and
Hmm.
Microsoft and Amazon, like all these really big tech companies, they have these people who are so smart because we're not getting rid of the dummies,
Yeah.
right? We're getting rid
Yeah.
of the really smart high
Yeah.
performers. And they're like, yeah, sure, I'll come. They have their pick. The talent pool is saturated right now. So I think it's really interesting. I don't, what is the next one going to be? Now it's going to be AI. Learn all
I,
about AI, be an
yeah.
expert in AI. Like,
Yeah. I wish I had an answer. I just don't know. So yeah,
me
that
neither.
it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. So
I do
that
want,
yeah, yeah,
oh, sorry.
go.
I do wonder if we are going to actually see a shift from these more quote unquote white collar jobs back to more trade specialists because
Hmm.
we are losing people who specialize in these trades. So, are we going to see less people go to college and more people go to trade school to become electricians and plumbers and builders? And are we going to, is that going to be the thing? Because no matter what happens, we need those people. So are we going to see the shift
Yeah.
in the type of jobs that people go for? Are people going to opt out of going to traditional four-year colleges and getting grad school degrees? And
Yeah.
you know, and the like to go into those trade industries, I think we might see a shift in that sense. So maybe it's not what's the new, you know, coding boot camp. It's,
Yeah.
oh, we're going to see more electricians and
Yeah.
plumbers and nail techs, and we need those things.
Yeah.
I think maybe that's where we're headed in this younger generation.
100%. And I think we're having kind of a full circle moment here where it's at the beginning of our conversation, we talked about student loans and student loan debt. To your
Mm-hmm.
point, I think the generation after us is saying, well, I'm going to take out a huge amount of debt for a job opportunity that might not be there.
Mm-hmm.
Or I have this option to go into the trades where it's, much more reasonable and the job prospects are looking just as good, if not
If
better.
not better, if not
Yeah.
better. Yeah.
And yeah. So you might be right. We might be swinging back to, more of those trades, more, plumbers, electricians, potentially welders, kind of those artisan fields, if you will, that individuals kind of forgot about over the last couple of years.
Yeah, which is weird because, you know, job security,
Yeah.
people have houses, people have
Yeah.
to, people live in housing structures no matter, you know, well, hopefully they live in housing structures.
Yeah.
And there's always going to be a need for something's always going to break. There's always going to be a need to fix it. So I do wonder, you know, are we going to see more of that because it is just a little bit more job security? And I know that I work with a nonprofit to help individuals in the area get scholarships. High school students get college scholarships. And one of the things I was asking is, what about trade schools?
Yeah.
And the director goes, "Oh, I don't know about trade schools." I was like, "We need to start talking about trade schools. How can we
Yeah.
help people get through trade schools?"
It's not a bad idea.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right. Well, was there anything else you wanted to chat about? Anything on your mind? Any other hot takes you wanted to share with our listeners here?
No,
Okay.
probably in my head somewhere, but not right
Yeah.
now.
Perfect. All right. And if anybody wanted to connect with you, where would you direct them to reach out?
You can find me on LinkedIn. Yeah.
Perfect. All right. Well, this does end our interview for today. I want to thank you for taking the time, and it was a pleasure.
It was so nice to meet you and talk to you. Thank you.
Perfect. All right. Thank you so much.